The Forbidden's planet, one male among millions asterisk. The sky was dark and silent as the escape pod entered the alien planet's atmosphere. Flames danced around the metal shell, shaking it side to side, inside the pod. A young human soldier named Jack lay unconscious. His armor torn, his body weak from battle. His mission had failed, his team was gone. And now he was falling into the unknown. The pod crashed into the soft purple soil of the strange planet. Steam rose from the sides, lights blinked red and yellow. And the silence returned. But only for a moment. Tall shadows moved near the wreck. Graceful and smooth, figures appeared, strange and beautiful, with skin that shimmered like silver and eyes that glowed like stars. They were not human, they were alien. And they were all women. One stepped forward, her long hair flowing like liquid light. She reached out, touched the metal door, and whispered a command in a soft language. The pod opened with a hiss, and they saw him, a male. Breathing, alive, they stared. Eyes wide, hands covering mouths, they spoke in fast voices, curious and excited. They had never seen a male before, not in their lifetime. Not on this planet. Jack groaned and opened his eyes slowly. His vision was blurry. All he saw were glowing lights and strange faces. He tried to move, but his body was too weak. His last memory was of his ship exploding in deep space, and now he was here. Surrounded by aliens, 2 of them lifted him gently. They were strong yet careful. Their touch was soft but firm. They carried him through a glowing forest filled with floating plants and strange sounds. The air was warm, sweet, and heavy with energy. They brought him to a large building that looked like it was made of crystal and light. Inside, walls pulsed like breathing skin, and machines hummed softly. They placed Jack on a soft table that adjusted to his shape, and then stepped back. Dozens of alien women gathered around him. Some wore long robes, others had armor. All of them stared at him like he was a miracle, or maybe a mystery. One of them waved her hand, and a light scanned his body from head to toe. Jack woke again. This time more alert. His arms moved, but he found glowing straps holding him down. Panic filled his eyes. He shouted for help, but the aliens only tilted their heads. Trying to understand, one of them stepped closer, her face calm and kind. She touched her chest and said, "Zira," then pointed to him. Asking his name, "Jack," he said slowly, his voice dry, confused. Zira repeated it softly, like she was tasting the word, then turned to the others and said something quickly. They all nodded and began to take notes on glowing tablets. Jack looked around, breathing fast, his hands pulled at the straps, his heart pounding. He didn't understand what they wanted. Were they doctors, scientists? Captor Zira touched a button, and the straps loosened. Jack sat up, dizzy and tense. She held up a drink, glowing blue, and offered it. He hesitated, then drank. It was cool and refreshing. His head cleared. "Where am I?" he asked. But she only smiled and shook her head, not understanding. He tried again. Slower. "This planet, what is it?" Zira placed her hand on a table screen. It showed a spinning globe. Then she said a name he could not pronounce, then pointed to herself and the others and said, "No males here, only us." Jack blinked, trying to understand her meaning. "Only females." He asked. She nodded. He stood up slowly, looking around, now fully aware. They were all female, every single one. And they were all focused on him. Zira reached out and touched his face gently, like he was something rare, something fragile. The others moved closer, whispering, pointing. One touched his hand, another his hair. More hands reached. Curious and fascinated, Jack stepped back, alarmed. "Wait, what are you doing?" he said. But they didn't stop. They began touching his armor, pulling gently, trying to see more of him. Not in a violent way, but like scientists examining something new. His suit's chest plate clicked open, and Jack froze. Zira looked into his eyes and whispered, "We study, we learn. You are different. Very different." He tried to back away, but more came, surrounding him, not hurting, just watching, touching, exploring. Jack looked around for help, for escape, for anything. But all he saw were hundreds of glowing eyes staring at him like he was the answer to a question. They never knew. They had. His heart raced. His breath quickened. He was the only man on a planet full of alien women who had never seen a male before, and now they had him asterisk. Jack opened his eyes again and saw only white light above him. The room was bright and silent. The ceiling was smooth and glowing, and the walls looked like liquid glass, shifting with soft colors. He tried to move, but his arms and legs were held down by thin glowing bands. They were not tight but strong enough to keep him still. Around him stood 4 alien women, each one tall and graceful with shining eyes and long silver hair. They wore strange robes that moved like smoke as they walked around him, slowly whispering to each other in a soft language that flowed like music. Jack's heart beat faster, his chest rising and falling as he tried to speak, tried to ask where he was, what they wanted, but they only watched him with curious faces. One of them stepped closer, her hand holding a small round device that hovered above his chest, scanning him with a soft blue light. The device beeped, and one of the women nodded. Then they began to speak faster to each other, making hand signs, pointing at different parts of his body and looking at strange symbols floating in the air above their devices. They were not angry or cruel, but their curiosity was strong, like scientists studying something rare. Jack looked around and saw one familiar face. It was Zira, the one who had spoken his name before, the one who had given him water. She stood behind the others, silent and thoughtful, her eyes watching him, not like an object but like a person. She stepped forward and raised her hand. The others moved aside as she came close to Jack and placed her hand gently on his arm. He felt the warmth of her skin, soft and real. Her eyes met his, and she said again in a calm voice, Jackie nodded slowly and whispered yes. Zira smiled and touched her own chest, saying Zira again, then tapped a floating screen next to the bed. It showed pictures of Earth, of humans, of men and women, of cities and oceans and stars. Jack's eyes widened as he saw familiar images mixed with alien symbols. He pointed to the Earth and said home. She nodded slowly, trying to understand, then pointed to her own planet and said a name he could not repeat, a sound like wind and light at the same time. Zira tapped again, and the screen changed, now showing other alien women. Many of them rows in rows, all looking similar, all tall and strong, all female. Jack looked confused and asked, where are the men? Zira paused, her smile faded. She looked at the others, then leaned close and whispered, no men, only us. Cloning no birth, no male for many generations. Jack stared at her, not sure what to say. He was the only male they had ever seen, the only one on this world full of women who had never known his kind. His thoughts raced as he looked around, realizing he was not just a visitor here. He was something more, something unknown. One of the other women approached and spoke to Zira. Quickly, Zira nodded, then looked at Jack and said, study now, understand, not harm, only learn, please. Jack nodded slowly, trying to trust them. He had no choice, really. He was alone, hurt and lost in a place where everything was strange, but Zira seemed honest and kind, so he let them begin. They released his arms and legs, gently helping him sit up. The table adjusted to support his back, and a soft blue mist filled the room, cool and calming. It smelled like flowers and clean rain. Owned by one, they checked his pulse, his eyes, his muscles, asking simple questions with gestures and soft words. Zira acted as a bridge between them, using images and symbols to translate, slowly learning more of his language and teaching him some of theirs. Jack began to relax just a little, seeing that they were not cruel, just curious. He watched as they recorded everything, his height, his strength, his voice, even his laughter. They were fascinated by his emotions, the way he smiled, the way he reacted to touch and sound. Zira showed him a small glowing orb, and when he touched it, it played a sound like music mixed with voices. Alien children laughing, alien skies with twin suns, birds that glowed like fire, and trees that sang with wind. Jack smiled for the first time since the crash, and Zira smiled too, but not all faces in the room were kind. One of the armored women stood in the back watching Jack with cold eyes, her hand on a metal rod strapped to her side. She said nothing, but her gaze never left him, as if she saw him not as a guest, but a threat. Zira noticed this too, and her smile faded once more. She leaned close and whispered in a soft voice, Jack, listen, Queen will come soon. She knows you are here. She will want you for her own. Not like us not to study, but to use. Jack looked at her confused, afraid. What do you mean? He asked. But Zira shook her head, saying, no time now, listen tonight. I help you escape, not safe here, not with Queen. Before he could ask more, the door opened, and two guards entered. They wore armor like silver stone and carried strange staffs that sparked with energy. They looked at Jack, then at Zira, then spoke sharply in their tongue. Zira bowed her head and stepped back. The guards moved to Jack and lifted him from the table, not gently, but not too rough either, taking him away through the shining halls, while Zira stood behind them, her eyes wide, her voice silent. Jack was taken to another room, darker, colder, filled with shadows and echoes, and as the door closed behind him, he heard one guard say in clear, sharp English, the Queen is coming. The room was silent and cold as Jack stood alone in the center. Strange machines lined the walls, glowing with dim light, and symbols that floated in the air. The floor beneath his feet felt smooth like glass, and the ceiling above shimmered with soft blue waves like water rippling in the sky. He took a breath, slow and steady, his mind spinning with questions, fear, and confusion mixing inside him. The door behind him was sealed. The walls had no windows, and there was no sound except for the low hum of energy running through the alien tech. He remembered Zira's warning, her voice still fresh in his ears. The Queen is coming. She will want you not to study, not to learn, but to use. Those words echoed in his thoughts again and again, like a drum that would not stop. Jack moved around the room, searching for anything useful. His fingers brushing over the strange panels on the wall. Glowing shapes shifted under his touch, but nothing opened. No exit, no sign of escape, just light and silence. Then a sound came, soft at first, like footsteps, padded and slow. His body tensed, and he turned toward the door. It slid open without a sound, and she entered. The Queen. She was taller than the others, her presence heavy like stone and fire. Her robe shimmered like liquid silver, her hair a crown of light, and her eyes cold and glowing with ancient power. She walked with purpose, her guards standing outside, not daring to follow her in. She stopped in front of Jack, looking at him like a lion studies a bird, curious but ready to strike. Her lips curved into a faint smile, and she spoke slowly, her voice smooth like silk wrapped around iron. You are not what we expected. Your kind is strange, but you may be useful, more than you know. Jack said nothing, his hands clenched at his sides, his heart beating loud in his chest. The Queen stepped closer, her hand reaching out to touch his face. He pulled back, but she laughed soft and deep like thunder underwater. Do not fear me, human, she said. Your strength is not in your weapons or armor. It is in your difference, your life, your seed. You carry something we lost long ago, something I will now take. Backed away, but the room had no corners, no shadows to hide. In her presence filled the space like a storm. She raised her hand, and light wrapped around Jack like invisible chains. He fell to one knee, struggling against the energy that pulsed through his body. You will help us rebuild, she whispered, not by choice, but by design. Then the door opened again, fast and without warning, and a voice called out loud and sharp, stop it. Was Zira rushed into the room, her hair wild, her eyes burning with anger. She stood between Jack and the Queen, her arms outstretched, her body trembling, but her voice steady. He is not yours to take, she said. He is a person, not a tool, not a cure. The Queen looked at Zira, and the smile faded, her voice now cold and sharp, like ice on skin. You forget your place, child. Do not challenge me again. Zira stood firm, her eyes locked with the Queen's, and for a long moment the room held its breath. Then the Queen turned her gaze back to Jack and said softly, you are not ready, but soon you will understand. She walked away, slow and silent, the door closing behind her, the room dimming. Once more Zira rushed to Jack and knelt beside him, helping him stand, her hands warm and strong, her breath quick. We do not have much time, she whispered. They will take you again tomorrow to a deeper lab. No one returns from there. Jack looked at her, confused, his voice hoarse. Why are you helping me? Zira looked into his eyes and said, because you are not just a subject. You are a spark, something we lost, something we forgot, and I believe you can help us remember. She pulled a small device from her belt and placed it in his hand. It looked like a stone, But when he pressed it, a map appeared glowing in the airline's tunnel's doors. A path to the edge of the city follow. This when the lights go dark tonight, I will disable the systems, but only for a short time. If you fail, they will never let you go again. Jack nodded, holding the map and shaking hands, fear still in his chest, but now joined by a spark of hope. Azira turned to leave, then stopped and said quietly, "There are others who believe as I do. Not all want to use you, some want to learn, some want to change. But the Queen is powerful, and she will not give up easily." She stepped through the door and was gone. Jack sat in the quiet, his hands wrapped around the map, his mind racing through what he had just seen, what he had just felt, and what he had to do. Tonight he would run, tonight he would fight for freedom, for answers, for survival. He looked up at the ceiling where the light still shimmered like water and whispered to himself, "I am not your test subject. I am not your tool. I am human, and I will find my way home." The air was thick with heat and dust as Jack stood in the middle of the arena, his feet sinking slightly into the golden sand that covered the floor above him. Rose walls made of crystal and stone shaped into wide circles stacked higher and higher, with hundreds of alien eyes watching him from every level, glowing softly in the half-light of the twin suns. He turned slowly, taking in the strange symbols carved into the ground, the tall gates sealed shut on all sides, and the cold silence that followed his arrival. Then came the sound of trumpets, not made from brass, but from light itself, notes that shimmered like silver wind floating over the arena, like an ancient song. The Queen appeared high above her robe, brighter than the sky itself, her eyes locked on Jack. Like a hawk watching the creature she had already claimed, her voice echoed through the space without sound, her lips moving slowly, yet heard by all without a single word being spoken aloud. He has been studied, he has been measured, he has been tested, and now he will prove if he is worthy to remain, if he is strong enough to survive, if he is more than just different. Jack stood still, fists clenched, heart thundering in his chest. He remembered Zira's words from the night before, remembered the hidden map, the narrow escape, the silent tunnels, the guards nearly catching him, and Zira opening the final door, whispering, "Run, and remember, your path ends in the arena, but your choices begin there." The gate behind him began to open, the grinding sound, deep and ancient, a wall of shadow forming in the doorway. Something large, something breathing, something not human. From the gate came a beast like nothing Jack had seen before. It moved on 6 legs, each one covered in scales and fire, its eyes glowing red like lava. Its mouth split in 3 rows of teeth, clicking together as it roared, the sound shaking the very floor. Jack stood on the crowd, fell silent as Jack backed away slowly, his eyes locked on the creature. No weapons, no armor, no protection. Just his bare hands and whatever strength remained in his body. He knew this was no test. This was not about learning. This was about survival. This was about power and dominance and fear. The beast charged without warning, dust flying in every direction. Jack dove to the side, rolling across the sand pane, shooting through his shoulder. As he landed, he scrambled to his feet, watching the creature turn faster than he expected, ready to strike again. He ran toward the wall, leapt onto a low ridge, grabbed a piece of metal buried in the sand. A broken pole, perhaps once part of a weapon. He spun around as the beast lunged forward, its mouth open, its body heavy and fast. Jack rolled beneath the monster, thrust the pole upward, caught it under the jaw. Sparks flew as metal hit bone. The beast shrieked, turned, smashed its tail into Jack's back, sending him flying across the arena. The crowd gasped. The Queen remained still, her expression unreadable. Jack groaned, pushing himself up, blood running down his arms, sand in his mouth, eyes burning from the heat. He looked at the pole, now broken and useless, the beast turning again, ready for the final blow. Then he saw a weak spot just behind its front leg, exposed when it roared and stood up tall. Jack waited, breath held, heart frozen, and then as the beast rose, he sprinted forward, jumped onto its leg, climbed with speed and fury, slammed his fist into the weak spot again and again until the creature fell back, roaring in pain, crashing to the ground, shaking the arena with its weight. Jack rolled away and stood panting, covered in dust, sweat, and blood, his hands shaking. Beast silent behind him, defeated but not dead, the crowd frozen in awe, the queen rising from her throne, her eyes glowing with something new, something dangerous. She raised her hand and the gate opened again, not for another beast, but for Jack to exit the arena alive, not as prey, not as prisoner, but as victor. Jack walked slowly toward the open gate, every step heavy, every muscle burning, his mind spinning with too many thoughts, too many feelings, but only one truth now mattered: he had survived. He had earned his place, even if he never wanted it. As he reached the gate, 2 guards stood waiting, their faces cold, their weapons ready, but they bowed as he passed, their silence a sign of respect or perhaps warning. The queen's voice echoed again. Now only for him, you have proven strength. You are more than curiosity, more than science. You are a symbol of change, and change begins with choice. You will come to me tonight, not as prisoner, not as subject, but as something greater, and I will decide what your future becomes. Jack said nothing. He kept walking, his body broken, but his spirit alive. He had fought. He had survived, and now a different battle was coming, one not fought with fists or claws, but with words and power and secrets far behind. In the shadows, Zero watched from the edge of the crowd, her hand on her chest, her eyes filled with fear, and something more, something deeper, hope and sorrow woven together. She whispered softly as Jack disappeared into the tunnel, you were never just a man, and now you are something even the queen cannot control. Jack stood inside the queen's chamber walls, pulsing with a faint blue glow, floor shining like glass, ceiling shaped like stars hanging in a frozen sky. Everything around him whispered of power, beauty, and danger. A throne made of crystal sat at the center, raised above the ground, surrounded by tall silent guards, standing like statues, had bathed in strange silver water, been dressed in soft alien fabric, and led here. Without a word, his wounds now healed by glowing mist, his body rested, but his mind filled with questions, memories of the arena still flashing in his eyes, the roar of the beast, the silence of the crowd, the queen's voice promising something he did not yet understand. The queen entered, her presence heavy and cold, her robe trailing behind like a river of light, her eyes locked on Jack, her expression unreadable. She stepped close and spoke with a voice smooth and deep like smoke in a cave. You have passed the test. You have shown strength, courage, and something more. The others study you, but I see what you truly are. You are not just human, you are change walking in flesh, and I must decide how to use you. Jack stayed silent, his fists tight by his sides, his heart beating fast. Her gaze moved over him slowly, her words sharp like blades hidden under silk. You may walk free inside these walls, no more chains, no more guards. Your chamber will be guarded, but not locked. Your body belongs to us, but your mind still chooses where to look and what to believe. Do not waste that gift. She turned and walked away, her voice fading as she spoke to her guards. Take him to the Hall of Echoes. Let him see what we lost. Let him understand what his presence means. 2 guards stepped forward, tall and silent, and led Jack through long glowing corridors, past windows that showed cities floating in the sky, forests made of glass, rivers that sang with light, and airships drifting like dreams through purple clouds. The Hall of Echoes was quiet and vast, filled with statues of alien women standing tall and proud, each one carved from light, their faces calm, their eyes forever watching. Jack walked between them, feeling their silence like wind on his skin. Walls showed images from the past, flashes of war, peace, joy, sorrow, families holding hands, voices laughing in the air, and then silence, empty streets, fading faces. Shadows left behind. One image stayed longer than the rest, a small child holding the hand of someone fading away. A male, his face blurred, his figure dissolving into stars. Jack reached toward the image, but it vanished, the light dimming as Zira stepped from the shadows behind him, her voice soft but sharp now. You see what we lost, not just people, but balance we cloned for generations, forgot the old ways, forgot love, forgot pain, forgot choice. We became perfect, but empty. You are a reminder of what we once had and what some want to steal. Jack turned to her, surprised to see her here after the arena, after the queen's warning. Zero walked Closer, her hands shaking slightly, her face calm, but her eyes full of fire. Some believe you should become a part of us, to lead us, to heal us. But others want to use you to keep their power, to control birth, to erase freedom again. I do not agree with them. I believe we must rebuild together, not under fear, not under chains. Reached into her robe and pulled out a small sphere, glowing faintly blue and red. This is a pulse key. It opens the outer gates for 60 seconds. Only once it can unlock the skyport where an old Earthship waits, broken, but not dead. It needs only a pilot, only a signal. Jack stared at the sphere, then back at Zira, his voice low. Why are you doing this? Why risk everything? Zira looked away for a moment, then back at him. Because I once believed the Queen, because I helped her rule, because I heard others, for science, for knowledge. But then I saw you not just alive, but human, not just a male, but a person. And I remembered who I used to be before the silence, before the Queen turned hearts into stone. She stepped closer and placed the sphere in his hand, her fingers trembling. This will be watched, guarded. I cannot go with you, not yet. But I will help from within. Others will follow when the signal rises. If you fail, they will call you a mistake. If you escape, they will call you a myth. But if you return, they will call you truth. Jack held the sphere tightly, his mind racing, his breath slow. He looked around the hall one last time, faces of stone watching him, voices of the past whispering in his chest. Not all chains were metal, not all prisons had walls. He nodded slowly, eyes locked on Zira, and whispered, when Zira answered, tonight when the moons touch each other, the power grid resets for 12 breaths. The Queen will be in ceremony. The guards will rotate. No one will expect movement, not after the arena, not after your victory. They believe you belong here. Now they believe you are broken into their world. Jack turned to leave, his hands cold, his thoughts loud as thunder behind him. Zira whispered one final thing before disappearing into shadow. If you reach the sky, look back only once, and remember, not everyone wanted you gone. Some of us prayed you would come. The night sky above the palace was painted with 2 silver moons slowly touching at the edges, like mirrors meeting in silence below. The city lights dimmed in rhythm as the power grid shifted, energy lines pulsing across the towers and bridges, like veins glowing with anticipation, as if the planet itself held its breath inside a dark corridor. Jack moved like a shadow dressed in stolen armor, his face hidden beneath a smooth silver mask. Zira's map flickered on his wrist, showing each turn, each guard, each heartbeat of danger around every corner. His fingers gripped the small pulse key tight against his palm, its glow hidden beneath the folds of his sleeve. He passed under glowing arches and silent statues, through ancient halls that once held laughter, now filled only with cold whispers and faint footsteps. His mind filled with the faces of those who had watched him, studied him, judged him, and the one who had believed in him. Queen's voice echoed in his thoughts like a storm behind glass, speaking of destiny, control, future sacrifice. But Jack knew her words were chains dressed in silk, and her throne built on silence. Not truth, not choice. He reached the core lab. Entrance doors, tall and sealed with living metal symbols, danced across the surface, reading his presence. Reacting to the signal in his armor, they opened slowly, revealing a chamber full of humming machines, glowing with soft light. Rows of capsules lined the walls, each holding something more terrible than he expected. Inside each capsule floated a form not yet alive, not yet shaped, small figures with blank faces suspended in blue liquid, part human, part alien. Each one a piece of a future designed not by love but by science, cold and perfect and controlled. Jack stepped back, heart racing, breath caught in his throat. He turned to leave, but a voice stopped him, sharp and clear like lightning through glass dew. You see it now? Do you finally understand? Zira stepped from the shadows, her robe torn, her face bruised, her eyes filled with sorrow and rage. They took me when they learned I helped you. They tried to erase me, but I escaped because you must see this. Because you must choose. Jack looked at her, confused, pain rising in his chest. You said there was hope. You said there were others. Shira nodded slowly, her voice shaking. Yes, and they wait now. They rise in the tunnels and the towers. They light the fires of change, but they need you, not as a soldier, not as a weapon, as proof. That choice still matters. That future is not something stolen suddenly. Alarms rang across the chamber, red light flooding the room, shadows moving in the walls. Guards approaching fast, their steps loud and sure. Jack reached for Zira, pulling her toward the emergency exit. At the back of the lab they ran through narrow tunnels lined with roots and light, until they reached a gate hidden beneath the surface above. Then the city roared with chaos, explosions blooming in the sky like fire flowers. Sirens singing in alien tones, towers shaking as rebel forces clashed. With the Queen's elite soldiers' shouts and screams blending into the thunder of falling stone and rising smoke, they climbed into a transport pod buried in the rock. Zira entered a code, and the vehicle shot forward through an underground rail. Fast as wind, silent as thought, walls blurring past them, like dreams slipping away. Zira leaned against the wall, her breath heavy. Her eyes closed and spoke softly. They will not let you leave, not without trying to take you back or destroy what you know, but you must go because our kind has forgotten how to feel, and you remind them. The pod slowed as they reached the outer gates. A giant metal door covered in vines and light, guarded by drones, scanning the tunnel for any trace of escape. Jack stepped out, activated the pulse key. The gate hissed, then cracked, then began to open, just as the first wave of guards appeared at the far end of the tunnel, their weapons glowing, ready to strike. Zira turned to him and said, "Run, I will stop them. I was never meant to go. I was meant to wake them." Jack hesitated, eyes locked with his heart pounding louder than the alarms. Then he turned and ran through the opening into the wind and light of the surface, across a field of glowing grass toward the remains of an old Earth shuttle, half buried in the dirt, covered in dust, but still alive, still waiting. He climbed inside, powered the ship with the key systems, flickered, then roared awake engines, trembling wings opening like a creature remembering how to fly. Behind him, blasts lit the sky, guards swarming across the land like insects, fire raining down from above. But he did not stop. He gripped the controls, teeth clenched, eyes forward. Ship lifted, shaking under weight and fire, but still rising, the stars pulling him upward as the planet fell behind, red and gold and blue, spinning slowly like a forgotten story. Inside the ship, Jack looked back, just once through the glass, saw the towers burning, saw the sky bleeding, saw hope shining in the darkness, like Zira's eyes whispering across space. "You were not our enemy, you were our mirror." The stars moved slowly outside the window as the ship drifted through silent space, its engines quiet, its lights dim. Jack sat alone in the cockpit, his hands resting on the controls, his face lit by the soft glow of distant suns, his heart heavy with memories, his mind replaying every moment, from the crash to the escape, from fear to fire, from confusion to choice. Stared at the small planet fading behind him, its skies still burning, its cities still rising, smoke painting the clouds with shades of change. He did not know what had become of Zira or the others, but he knew something had broken, something had shifted, something had begun. Ship systems blinked with weak signals, long-range sensors, searching for any voice, any beacon, any sign of Earth. But the silence remained deep and wide. Jack leaned back, closed his eyes and listened, not to the machine but to the quiet that lived between the stars, the kind of quiet that held more than emptiness, the kind of quiet that listened back hours past. Or maybe days. Time no longer mattered. The ship moved toward a cluster of lights ahead. A space station, old and quiet, orbiting a dead moon, its signal weak but human, its doors sealed but waiting. Jack smiled faintly and guided the ship in slow and careful until the metal touched metal and the airlock opened with a soft breath of welcome. Inside the station, dust floated in the air like forgotten snowlights flickered with age. Systems hummed with tired energy, but it was enough. Jack moved through the halls, reading the symbols on the walls, maps written in Earth's old tongue, messages left behind by those who came before him, notes of hope, warnings of silence, dreams carved into steel. He reached the core chamber, activated the main console, and placed the pulse key onto the platform. The room lit up with data flowing across the screens, stories from the planet below, images of the cloning chambers, The queen, the arena, the rebels, everything recorded, everything sent into the stars with one signal. He pressed the button, and the message launched into deep space, a golden thread of light carrying truth across the dark, to whoever still listened, to whoever still believed, to whoever still called. Earth, their home. Jack stood still watching the signal vanish into the distance, then turned to the old station, began repairs, cleared debris, fixed wires, replaced broken parts until the place breathed again, slow but steady, like something waking from a long sleep. Days became weeks. Jack worked in silence but not loneliness. Voices filled his thoughts, voices of the alien city of Zira, of the children in the capsules, of the rebels fighting for a choice, their faces lit by hope, their hands reaching for something more than orders, more than control. He built a garden in the lower deck using alien seeds found in the shuttle, mixed with earth soil from old storage tanks. Light panels above mimicked the twin suns. Green vines curled around the walls. Flowers bloomed with colors he had never seen. Scents that reminded him of both worlds blended into something new. He wrote in a small log each night, not just facts or instructions, but feelings, doubts, fears, hopes. He spoke to the station as if it listened. Sometimes he even smiled, remembering how Zira once said, words have power, and sometimes they grow faster than any root. One morning the alert system chimed, not loud but clear. A ship was approaching, not alien, not silent, a human design, old but alive. Its signal repeating one word again and again. Echo. Jack waited as the ship docked, its doors opening, slowly revealing two figures in light suits, faces wide with wonder, eyes wide with shock, as they saw him standing there, as they saw the garden behind him, as they saw the screens showing a planet once ruled by silence, now alive with voices. They stepped forward slowly, unsure and amazed. One spoke softly into her device. We found him. The signal was real. He is real. Jack welcomed them, shared food, shared stories, showed them the message, the recordings, the garden, the truth. They listened not just with ears, but with hearts, and when they left, they took everything he gave them and promised to return. Weeks later, more ships came, not with weapons, but with minds open, hands open. Some came from Earth, some from colonies long forgotten, and Jack watched as the station became a bridge, not just of metal, but of meaning. A place where the past met the future and something new could grow. One evening, as the garden glowed under artificial stars and the halls echoed with soft laughter, Jack stood alone near the window, watching the stars move slowly above the world that once held him prisoner and later offered him purpose. He closed his eyes and whispered a name, not his own but hers. The one who had shown him what it meant to be seen, not for strength, not for fear, but for truth. Zira did not know if she still walked among the ruins, or if her light had faded into the smoke, but he carried her voice inside him and through him. It echoed through every seed, every breath, every signal, every step toward something better. Stars did not answer, but they listened, and that was enough.